My wife lied about her pregnancy while I worked nights to secure our future, so I exposed truth and left silently. Now she cries daily. I'm a 28-year-old guy who's always believed that hard work and sacrifice are the foundation of a strong marriage. Ever since I was a kid, I watched my parents struggle, and I swore I'd never let money, or the lack of it, dictate my life. When I got married, I carried that same mindset. Long nights at work, overtime, extra shifts, whatever it took to make sure our little home felt secure. I remember the first weeks after the wedding, exhausted from pulling 12-hour nights, walking into the apartment and seeing her smile as she brewed coffee for me. "I don't know what I'd do without you," she said one morning, and for a moment, all the exhaustion melted away. I believed her. I truly did. Every sleepless night, every skipped meal, every dollar I tucked away felt like an investment in the life we were building together. A future where we'd start a family, laugh in our kitchen, and never have to stress about bills. In those early days, she was affectionate in ways that made me feel seen. Little notes on the fridge, kisses on my cheek, curling up next to me after I'd come home smelling of streetlights and diesel. She talked about kids like she already felt them inside us, naming rooms and imagining colors. And I, in turn, worked harder, convinced that the sacrifices I made now were shaping something bigger, something lasting. There were minor inconsistencies, of course, missed appointments, vague mentions of doctor visits, or times she complained about feeling off, but I brushed them off. Stress, fatigue, whatever it was. I didn't want to see doubt where there was love. I figured I was tired, maybe she was tired, maybe life just had these little bumps. But even as I planned every detail of our future, saving, budgeting, dreaming, a small knot of unease started forming in my gut. It was subtle at first, easy to ignore. I didn't realize then that this knot would grow, twist, and tighten in ways I couldn't yet imagine. And by the time I'd notice, the foundation I was building would be crumbling beneath me. A few weeks later, she told me she was pregnant. I remember sitting on the edge of the couch, my hands trembling slightly, trying to contain the mix of shock, joy, and pride. "We're going to be parents," she whispered, eyes shining. And for a moment, it felt like everything I'd worked for, the nights, the overtime, the sacrifices, had finally paid off. I immediately started planning, rearranging shifts, cutting back on small luxuries, making room in our budget for doctor visits, a bigger apartment, and all the tiny things a baby needs. I told myself every sleepless night ahead would be worth it, that every penny I saved was building a future for all three of us. But almost immediately, small things started to nag at me. Her appointments seemed to shift or disappear altogether. Sometimes she'd mention feeling dizzy or tired, but then laugh it off when I asked if she needed rest. A few times, I overheard her muttering to herself about tests or visits, but when I tried to join the conversation, she'd brush me off with a smile. "I'm fine. Don't worry," she said, but the way she avoided eye contact made something in my gut tighten. I didn't want to see it, though. I wanted to trust her, to believe the future we were building together. I tried to drown the doubts in planning, nursery layouts, pediatricians, even imagining family dinners with her parents. I shared my excitement with friends, my coworkers, anyone who would listen, because it felt like the right thing, celebrating life, celebrating us. Yet late at night, lying on my side in an empty bed, I began noticing the inconsistencies, the small lies, the timing of events, the tension when I asked questions. My mind raced, trying to make sense of things I didn't want to acknowledge. Something was off, but I clung to hope, convincing myself that this was just stress, or coincidence, or my own paranoia. And still, I had no idea how deep the deception ran, or how soon I would be forced to face a truth I wasn't prepared for. The exhaustion started hitting me harder. Nights blurred into mornings, the fluorescent lights of the office and the hum of the street outside blending into a constant, numbing background. I was running on pure adrenaline, pushing myself through double shifts while she stayed home, resting and painting the picture of a perfect pregnancy. I'd come home, bones aching, only to find her curled up on the couch, scrolling her phone, smiling at messages I wasn't privy to. "You're working too hard," she'd say, voice soft, eyes glinting with that subtle mix of guilt and charm. And somehow, I felt guilty for being tired. I tried to balance my fatigue with hope. I imagined late-night feedings, first steps, birthday candles, all the milestones we had promised ourselves. I took her cravings seriously, rushing to the grocery store at midnight for pickles or ice cream, pretending the endless sacrifice didn't weigh me down. She praised me, calling me the best husband ever, or whispering that I was her safe place, and I clung to that. Those words felt like currency, paying for the sleepless nights and aching back, convincing me that I was doing something heroic. But the inconsistencies were becoming harder to ignore. Sometimes she'd mention doctor visits I hadn't heard about, or appointments that got canceled, or symptoms that didn't add up. I caught myself questioning, why is this off? But I shoved the thought away, afraid of looking like the paranoid husband. Friends started hinting at subtle signs too. Her mood swings, the way she avoided certain topics, but I insisted on believing her. Late one night, lying on the couch while she slept beside me, I felt a hollow pit in my stomach. Something was seriously wrong, and deep down, I knew it. The life I was pouring every ounce of energy into might not even exist, and I had no idea just how soon the truth would hit me like a sledgehammer. By this point, I couldn't ignore the nagging doubts anymore. I started paying attention to the details, the way her stories didn't quite match, the way she hesitated when I asked questions about doctor visits. I didn't want to be the husband who didn't trust his wife, but the unease in my chest was growing too loud to ignore. One evening, I casually asked about an appointment she'd mentioned earlier. "Oh, it got rescheduled," she said, brushing it off with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. But when I tried to confirm, the receptionist had no record of her ever booking anything. My stomach dropped. I began discreetly checking other things, insurance statements, receipts, even her texts when she left her phone unattended. Every small inconsistency felt like a puzzle piece I wasn't ready to assemble, but my gut screamed at me that something was off. I tried to confront her gently at first. "Hey, I noticed the appointment didn't show up. Everything okay?" I asked, keeping my voice calm, hoping she'd laugh it off as a misunderstanding. She smiled, just enough to make me doubt my doubts. "Yeah, I must have mixed up the dates, silly," she said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. But it wasn't just the appointments. Little things were piling up. Missed medications she claimed she'd taken, symptoms that didn't make sense, contradictory stories about doctors or tests. Every time I asked, she deflected with charm or tears, making me feel guilty for doubting her. The home that once felt safe now felt like a cage, each lie stacked silently in the corners. I started losing sleep, lying awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had been completely blind, or if she had been manipulating me all along. And then, just when I thought I could tolerate the uncertainty a little longer, I stumbled onto a thread of evidence that would change everything. Though I had no idea how devastating the truth would be when it finally came crashing down. I'll never forget the moment I uncovered the truth. I was scrolling through her messages late at night, half expecting to find nothing, when a string of texts caught my eye. Appointments, doctor names, everything, but none of it was real. Every scan, every test result, every anxious text she'd sent about our supposed baby was a lie. My hands went cold, the phone slipping slightly from my grip as I stared at the screen, disbelief eating through me. I felt my chest tighten, heart hammering against my ribs, like someone had just shoved a brick down my throat. The betrayal wasn't just shocking, it was visceral, like the ground beneath me had been pulled out and I was free falling. I sat there for what felt like hours, going through evidence, trying to convince myself it wasn't real. But every timestamp, every fabricated message, every doctored screenshot confirmed it. She had never been pregnant. Not once. I remembered all the sacrifices I had made, the nights I skipped sleep, the hours I spent working extra shifts, the weekends I spent planning for a life that didn't exist. Rage bubbled under the surface, but it was tangled with sorrow and disbelief. How could someone you love and trust manipulate you so completely? When I confronted her, I tried to stay calm, my voice low and steady. "I know," I said, holding the evidence in front of her. She froze, eyes wide, a nervous laugh escaping her lips. I can explain," she stammered, but it was too late. I could see the panic, the desperation, the realization that I knew everything. For a moment, she wasn't the woman I married. She was someone else entirely, someone who had spent months playing a role, exploiting every ounce of my trust and devotion. I sank into the couch, exhausted and hollow. realizing that the life I had been building, every sleepless night, and every penny saved, had been for a lie. And in that silence, a dark thought formed in my mind. I had to decide, react in anger, or plan my escape in silence, on my own terms. After that night, I knew I couldn't act impulsively. Rage and heartbreak burned through me, but I also realized that any reaction driven by anger would give her power, and I wasn't about to hand it over. I spent the next few days quietly documenting everything: messages, screenshots, dates, inconsistencies. I even went through bank statements and insurance records to make absolutely certain I had undeniable proof. The more I collected, the more clarity I gained. For the first time in months, my mind felt sharp again, focused on one thing: regaining control of my life without letting her manipulate me further. I began planning my exit in silence. I rearranged finances, ensured I had access to everything independently, and made arrangements for a place to stay if I had to leave abruptly. Every interaction with her became careful, calculated. Watching her panic when I asked mundane questions, noting how she seemed unaware that I knew the full truth. I spoke less, observed more, letting her hang herself with her own lies without needing to push. The house, once a place of love and shared dreams, felt like a stage where I was finally aware of the script. It was strange, feeling this mix of liberation and grief. I missed the idea of her, the partner I thought I knew, the life I thought we were building, but I hated the reality. My nights were still long, my body still tired, but my mind was no longer clouded with doubt. I finally had clarity, and clarity was power. Yet, even as I planned my silent exit, a part of me couldn't help but watch her, curious about how she'd react when the truth finally caught up with her. And deep down, I knew the moment I left would hit harder than anything I could have imagined, because she had no idea how carefully I'd been preparing. The day came when I finally decided to expose the truth, quietly, strategically, without a scene. I started with our closest friends and family, showing them the evidence I had meticulously collected. Screenshots, texts, fake doctor notes, every detail laid bare. The shock on their faces was immediate. I can't believe she'd do this," one friend whispered, eyes wide, voice trembling. The disbelief, the betrayal, mirrored exactly how I felt. Only now I had allies who understood the reality, people who would see the truth without her manipulations clouding it. I watched her closely during this time, keeping my expression calm while she continued her routine of false cheer, oblivious to the network quietly unraveling her lies. Every smile she forced, every little performance, made me feel a strange mix of pity and satisfaction. I stayed composed, letting her think she still held control, while secretly I was untangling the web she had spun around me. "Everything's fine, right?" she asked one night, trying to gauge my reaction. I nodded, barely hiding the smirk forming behind my tired eyes. Her facade began to crack in small ways. A friend questioned her casually about appointments she had bragged about, and the pause, the falter, the nervous laugh. It told me everything I needed to know. I could feel her panic rising, though she had no idea why. I was calm. I was silent. And in that silence, I had regained the upper hand. Lying in bed that night, I thought about all the times I'd been manipulated, all the nights I'd sacrificed, and all the trust I'd given freely. I realized that power had shifted, quietly, decisively, without drama or confrontation. She had no clue what was coming, and for the first time in months, I felt entirely in control. But even as I closed my eyes, I couldn't shake the thought. She was beginning to crumble, and I hadn't even taken the final step yet. Living under the same roof with her after exposing pieces of the truth felt surreal. Every glance, every word she spoke, was laced with tension, though she had no idea I knew just how deep her lies ran. I could see it in the way she avoided eye contact, the forced cheerfulness that didn't reach her eyes, the subtle tremor in her hands when she thought I wasn't looking. Nights were the worst. I'd lie awake on the couch, listening to the faint hum of the city outside, the smell of coffee lingering in the kitchen, and I realized just how hollow the home had become. She tried everything: tears, guilt trips, apologies she didn't mean. "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to. She'd begin, trailing off whenever she saw my expression. But I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I let her words hang in the air, meaningless and powerless, because the control she had over me was gone. Every attempt she made to draw me back, to manipulate me into forgiving, only reinforced the stark contrast between us. She clung to deception. I held reality. Even small interactions were exhausting. She'd leave passive-aggressive notes about chores, hints about our future, little reminders meant to provoke me, but I walked around the apartment as if I didn't notice. Each day, the tension thickened, a tangible weight pressing against my chest, and yet I felt a grim satisfaction knowing she had no idea that I had been silently reclaiming my life. It was lonely, yes, and there were nights when doubt crept in, whispering that maybe I should act, confront her directly, or explode. But deep down, I knew patience was the sharper weapon. She was unraveling on her own, and I didn't need to do a thing. All I had to do was wait, and watch her slowly spiral while I prepared the final step. And in the quiet darkness of the apartment that night, I realized just how far I had come, from blind trust to complete control, standing on the edge of the final act. The morning I left, I woke before her, quiet as a shadow. Every step I took through the apartment felt deliberate, measured, a silent farewell to a life that had been built on lies. I packed my essentials, the bag light but heavy with meaning, making sure every document, every shred of proof, every ounce of independence was secure. I didn't leave a note. I didn't shout. I didn't look back. The apartment smelled faintly of coffee and last night's laundry, ordinary, normal, and yet it felt like a stage set for the final act of our story. She woke to find me gone mid-morning, her frantic whisper breaking the stillness. Where are you going?" Her voice cracked, a mix of panic and disbelief. I stayed calm, voice even. "I'm leaving. This isn't working," I said, almost gently, and I could feel her desperation spike like electricity in the air. She stumbled through questions, accusations, teary pleas, but I had rehearsed this exit for months. I didn't answer beyond what I needed. Silence became my shield, detachment my power. Outside, the city carried on as if nothing had happened, indifferent to the storm I had just left behind. I could feel the weight lifting with every step, the exhaustion finally giving way to clarity and freedom. Her messages started almost immediately, calls, texts, even friends reaching out on her behalf, but I ignored them all. Each ping was a reminder of the control she once had, now impotent. The truth was exposed, the web unraveled, and I had walked away without giving her the satisfaction of confrontation. Even as I found myself sitting alone in a small rented apartment, the quiet hum of traffic below, I felt alive for the first time in months. The betrayal had cut deep, but so had the resolve to reclaim my life. And somewhere, in the silent aftermath of her panic, I knew she would feel the weight of her deception every day, while I finally breathed freely, unshackled and unafraid. Life after leaving felt surreal at first. The quiet of my new apartment, the faint hum of traffic outside, even the smell of fresh coffee in the morning. It was freedom in its purest form. I no longer had to worry about decoding lies or walking on eggshells. Every small decision, from what I ate to when I slept, was mine alone. It was strange, realizing how much weight I had carried without noticing. The exhaustion that had defined my days was slowly replaced with a sense of control I hadn't felt in months. I started rebuilding myself, not just financially but emotionally. I spent mornings running through the park, evenings reading, nights catching up on sleep I hadn't had in years. Friends who had supported me during the unraveling became my anchors, reminding me that life could be simple again, that trust could be earned and boundaries respected. Each day, the memories of her lies faded a little, replaced by the clarity of being in a space where manipulation and deceit didn't exist. And yet, remnants of the past lingered. Sometimes, I would get a text from an unknown number or a message from her friend, a subtle attempt to reach me. I never responded. Every ping was a reminder of the power she thought she still had, but she had none. My life was finally mine. I started focusing on things I had long neglected, hobbies, new routines, even dreams that had been shelved while I poured everything into a future that never existed. Most importantly, I felt the quiet satisfaction of knowing that I didn't need to fight to win. Truth and time were already doing the work. I could watch her consequences unfold without touching a thing, knowing that she would feel the weight of her choices daily, while I finally lived in the clarity, independence, and peace I had been craving for so long. Over the next few weeks, I started hearing about the ripple effects of her deception. Friends and family who had once been charmed by her facade began to question her. Casual remarks, a raised eyebrow, whispered doubts. Everything she had carefully crafted was unraveling. I learned she had tried to explain herself, tried to manipulate others with half-truths and sob stories, but the evidence I had shared was undeniable. People started keeping their distance, their trust no longer a currency she could exploit. It was strange, watching someone I once loved face the consequences of their actions silently, from a distance, without ever needing me to intervene. Every time I caught a glimpse of her through mutual friends or social media, I noticed the cracks widening. Her confident smile faltered in ways I had never seen. Her laughter sounded forced, and the energy she had used to manipulate me was now directed at salvaging her reputation. I felt a dark sense of satisfaction knowing that the fear, anxiety, and isolation she had inflicted on me were now reflected back in her own life. I didn't gloat or seek revenge. The universe seemed to be delivering her lessons naturally. Meanwhile, I continued rebuilding myself. I could sleep without the constant anxiety of deception lingering over my head. I could plan my days, my career, my finances without her interference, without wondering if every "I love you" or "I need you" was laced with manipulation. The contrast between our lives could not have been starker. I was regaining control, confidence, and stability, while she was learning that charm and lies have a shelf life. And yet, I knew the final closure would come quietly, naturally, without me needing to be the executioner of justice. Watching her reputation crumble, her influence fade, and her isolation grow, I realized that the most satisfying revenge is living well while the person who betrayed you faces the consequences of their own actions. Months later, I finally felt the weight lift completely. My life, once tangled in lies and manipulation, was mine again. I woke up in a quiet apartment of my own, sunlight spilling across the floor, coffee brewing, no one's voice or deceit lingering in the air. I had rebuilt my finances, my routines, my sense of self, and for the first time in years, I could breathe without anxiety gnawing at the edges of every thought. The betrayal had cut deep, but the healing, the independence, and the clarity felt infinitely stronger. She tried to reach out, of course. New numbers, social media messages, even mutual friends cautiously probing, hoping I would respond. I didn't. I let the silence speak for itself. Every attempt she made to reclaim control or manipulate was met with calm detachment. I didn't need to argue, to prove, or to justify myself. Her consequences were unfolding naturally, and I was untouchable. I started focusing on things that had been neglected for far too long. Hobbies, small dreams, a social life untouched by deceit. I reconnected with friends who reminded me of who I was before manipulation and betrayal clouded every interaction. The freedom was intoxicating. I laughed without guilt, planned without fear, and slept without the constant hum of lies in my mind. And the best part? Watching her isolation from afar. She had no idea the extent of the collapse her lies had caused. Friends had pulled back, family was skeptical, and every day she faced the reality she had created herself. I didn't need to punish her. Time and truth did it better than any words or confrontations ever could. For the first time, I felt pure, unshakable empowerment. I had walked away without compromise, without losing myself in anger or revenge. I had reclaimed my life, my dignity, and my peace. And as I sipped my morning coffee, sunlight warming my face, I realized something powerful. I had survived betrayal, exposed the lies, and emerged stronger. She cried daily, haunted by the consequences she sowed, while I finally lived free, whole, independent, and unbroken.